welcome to the Outliers Inn, produced by the Operational Excellence Society and sponsored by Zonatech Consulting Group International, with your hosts, Joseph Paris and David Schneider.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Outliers Inn. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Schneider, and on the other screen is our other esteemed host, JP. And the Mule is here in the warehouse because we took a punch on this journey. Scheduling screw up, and I'm not in my studio. I'm actually in a warehouse at a client site, and I found a nice quiet corner to be able to have our podcast today. So welcome everybody to another fun episode.
Well, it's good to see one of us working for a living. That's all I got to say. Where are you out?
I'm in beautiful Draper, Utah. If I look that way out of the window, the Kennecott Mine, and if I look over my shoulder this way, that's where Park City is.
Awesome. So the theme of today's show, David, is getting punched in the mouth. And it's a takeoff of a couple of historical sayings, but the immediate takeoff is Mike Tyson, when he said famously, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mought.
That's
right.
And
so we're going to talk about some plans that we might have had during our lives, and what went awry, when they went awry, and what did we do about it? What were the end results? And the more self-deprecating, the better. And in fact, this whole entire podcast recording is pretty much a punch in the mouth, because it was supposed to be either Monday or Wednesday, and there's conflict. And I didn't know until Sunday evening that there was that conflict, because I got a reminder from Zoom that said, your podcast is tomorrow. And I'm like, no, it's not tomorrow. It's Wednesday. And I looked at my calendar, and sure enough, it said Wednesday. And then
my calendar, it said Monday.
Yeah, see, and this is a challenge now, isn't it? Because there's so many modes of communication. And you and I were just talking about this. So many modes of communication. Is that, do we use WhatsApp? Do we use Facebook? Do we use LinkedIn? How about good old-fashioned email? And somewhere along the lines, I'm sure that each of these days was decided upon, but I don't know which one was the first and which one was the second, or which one was the true one, or which one was the false.
I have a little bit running memory on that, because I looked at my notes when I was in the studio on Monday, because I had wrote them down. We had originally decided at the end of the last podcast, after everybody had gone away and we were just about ready to close up, we'll just do it for the same date. And it was on a Wednesday, same date, same time. And then I got upstairs and looked at my calendar and went, oh crap, I'm going to be in Draper, Utah that day in a workshop with one of my clients. That ain't gonna work. So I sent you a text message, but it wasn't a standard text message. It was one of those messenger apps that we use. And well, we can switch that. So we had that communication, but it never then got past your phone and into your calendar, which has happened to me. People have texted me back and forth, and great. I assume they're going to send me a meeting invite, but no, the text message was all that they depended on. It was like, really? Oh, was that my drop? Oh, okay.
All right. Well, if this could get this screwed up, and it's simple, I have a suggestion for our next podcast recording. We're going to stream live to LinkedIn Live.
Wow. Okay.
Potential audience of 1.1 million people. We've got a virtual studio that we've been working on here to manage the multiple streams of video and audio. And we're even going to have a couple of guest spots from some artists that are going to show us some of the techniques as we take breaks during the podcast. So it's going to be exercising all the skills that we think that we have learned. And, as they say in live studio, you can't put the shit back in the horse. Once it's out, it's out, you know,
No, you can't.
and no, we're going to do a live fire event the next time. We'll have to figure out what that day is going to be, but it'll be a hoot, no doubt.
Yeah, there's no second takes in live performance.
No, it'll be live. It'll be live, and it'll be funky. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, as a matter of fact.
I definitely want to be in studio for that one and not standing in a nice toasty warehouse.
Yeah, I mean, that might even be a weekend thing that we have to do or something like that. You know, try to minimize the amount of potential people watching it.
See, now you teased a little bit about this last episode.
Yes.
And so I like that we're sharing a little bit more with the audience of what the future will look like. Yes.
Yeah. And for the next one, I'll actually introduce the entire program that we're working on. My partner and I are working on this thing. It's going to be pretty darn cool, I'll tell you what.
I'm excited.
So let's get back to
getting a punch.
Yeah, getting a punch. You got any good projects?
Well, we're living through one right now with this client, and they are a very successful business. Last week, the president of the company announced to the team, they had a team meeting. They've been working virtually since the pandemic began last March. And even with all that, this e-commerce company has seen 60%, 65% growth year on year. And not only have they seen that growth, but they are already, we're halfway through the first year of that 5-year projection. Their sales volume was already up above what they had expected for the full year.
Wow.
And so, it's a quality problem to have because they're growing faster than we planned. When they engaged me last year, I walked through the 45,000 square foot that's this existing facility and went, yeah, you'll be able to live in here about another 18 months. And that was until I saw the revised growth projections and went, no, you won't live in here 18 months. We got to accelerate finding a new building. And so we took down 325,000 square foot. Lease got signed last month, fully executed just last week for that 325,000. So it's 7 times the current building.
Was it already built out? I mean,
it was under construction. So the C of O on the shell is next Tuesday. And one of the things that was keeping us from being able to start moving inventory into that building is they didn't pass the water test and hadn't passed the water test and hadn't passed the water test. And they couldn't turn on the fire sprinkler until they had passed the water test. And they have to test the sprinkler pump before they could get the C of O on the shell and before we could apply for the temporary C of O to operate inside the building.
Okay, so you've mentioned the C of O a couple of times, and the C of O sounds like a TLA, right?
Certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
It is a official document from the building department that says you can now occupy this space. Otherwise, without a CO, you can't put anything in the building. You can't put any people in the building because it's still considered under construction.
Okay.
So it's been a juggling match. In our original plan and the way the building was going to come together, well, okay, building will get handed over 3rd week of August. We can start moving inventory in 4th week of August. Gee whiz, they have a sale promotion that starts the Friday before Labor Day. Will we be able to get in time? And then, here's 27 containers now arriving 2 weeks ahead of schedule.
Now, see, this doesn't sound like a punch. This sounds like a rabbit punch. This is one of those this is a speed bag punch. This is
it's a so we've been going through all that, but it still looks like we'll be able to pull it off. We're going to move into a building without lights, but we figured out temporary lights yesterday. They passed the water test, so now we can green light. getting enough trucks and tractors lined up to start moving inventory, getting systems set up temporarily. Yeah, there will be no internet service to that building. Okay. Wi-Fi hotspots, cellular hotspots, 2 of them already purchased, ready to deploy. And so every punch that's been thrown, we've been doing this and doing this like crazy, and been avoiding getting tagged. But yeah, the containers arriving early, nobody could control that. It was a total surprise. Everybody had been banking on just everything being slow out of the port of LA. Well, all of a sudden somebody pulled a plug and a whole boatload of stuff arrived. And now we're having to deal with, well, do we unload this one or do we leave it in the yard and pay some detention?
Right.
You know, there's that decision process getting made. It's costing some money, but the client understood that. We actually budgeted for some money for this.
Yeah, well, you had to have, I mean, a project that complicated, you have to have a slush fund in there because you know it's not going to go according to plan or on budget. You know, those two things, you know, budgets are just.
Yeah, it's the whole history. We keep talking about the way Tyson talked about it, but you know, you go back to this is von Macke the Elder, I believe, who said that you know, in warfare, all plans disintegrate upon first contact with the enemy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you know, the old Prussian general knew that before the start of World War I. So it's name of the game.
Yeah. Well, I've got one. I've got one. I was thinking about it, you know, given that, you know, we had some time to think about the, you know, so we knew about the theme and had some time to think about, you know, when we got punched in the mouth. And I'll tell you what, David, as you know, you can't be in business for like 30 something years without getting punched in the mouth a few times. But there's one project in particular out of all the ones that, you know, didn't go according to plan. This one in particular, it was particularly challenging. The client made custom kitchen cabinets and doors, specifically doors, from various different types of wood that the client would want. You know, they make their custom doors. Well, the owner of the company was getting up in years. I mean, you know, probably in the, you know, late 60s, maybe pushing 70. And he wanted to pass the business on to his 2 kids, which were in their 30s, maybe early 40s, a son and daughter. And the idea was to get everything out of his head, how they estimate it, how they optimize the cut of the raw logs, you know, when it's a good idea to buy pre-cut versus, you know, cutting your own logs down into planks and whatnot. All this stuff was in his head. And our job was to take it out of his head and put it into an ERP system because his kids had no idea how any of the business ran. All right.
Well, that's a gigantic leap.
It's a big leap. All right. So we signed the contracts with them the Friday before Thanksgiving. Now this is probably 15 years ago. Okay. So it's not a recent event. It's 15, maybe a little bit longer. They signed the contracts with us to implement this system the Friday before Thanksgiving. And we send them down because they're having family Thanksgiving together. We sent the whole family a big wine and cheese basket, you know, to thank them for, you know, signing on with us and looking forward to the project. Well, wouldn't you know, the father died the day after Thanksgiving of a heart attack, massive heart attack. He dies. Okay. The 2 kids don't know anything about the business. It turned into a séance, okay? Because they didn't know how to run the business. I don't know how to make cabinets. You know, I know how to implement the ERP systems. I could tell you, you know, how much it costs. I could tell you what the routing might be, okay? But not the real magic of what was in that guy's head to identify, you know, how that log was going to be cut, how it was going to be prepared, how the door was going to come together. The ERP system didn't care about that. It just cared about materials, labor, operations. We could track the costs. And bit by bit, this company started going into the death spiral. I mean, it was really sad. It took a couple of years for them to actually crater. And all this time, this is what was really killing me. All this time, the kids were living as if dad still was alive and running the business. In other words, they'd go for their 2-week snowmobiling vacations in the wintertime. Rome is burning, and they're not attending.
Ooh.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're just not. And so finally, the place went out of business. All right, declared bankruptcy. And so what happens? I get a letter from a lawyer. They want to sue me for $1 million.
Oh,
$1 million. Okay.
$1 million.
Well, it didn't go too far. Basically, we wrote them a check for $5,000 to cover their legal costs up to that point, and they went away. But the reason they had to sue us was because they telegraphed to the bank that their inventory was worth like $750,000. All right. And it was basically one container full of lumber is what they actually had on hand. And they were blaming the ERP system for overvaluing their inventory. Now, I don't care if it's the most rich mahogany, the most highly prized piece of wood on the face of the planet.
Wingate wood. Wingate.
Yeah. Okay, if you have a container of it, I don't think it's going to be worth $750,000. But these people, any casual passerby would have looked at the Lowe's lumber area and say, well, that's $50,000 worth of lumber. But if they didn't sue us, they would have gone to jail for fraud.
Ooh.
Right? Because they're telegraphing, they're asserting to the banks, federally backed SBA loans and stuff like that. It was worth $750,000 when it was worth bupkis. And they deflected the blame onto us. And what are you going to do? But yeah, that was a punch in the mouth. That was a project that got punched in the mouth. I mean, it was strangely,
a knockout blow. It wasn't just a punch in the mouth. It was a knockout blow.
Well, it was certainly a knockout blow to them, their father dying. Okay. For me, it was absurd on its face, and I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, but, then
lawsuit.
Then I'm reading the paper and it says, they're supposed to have like, $1 million, $750,000 worth of inventory, and they had 50,000, and they're blaming it on an ERP glitch. And, you couldn't say that with a straight face. You know what I mean? That they being in the business, they didn't know the difference. So, anyway, that was a sad one. I mean, we've all had projects that have gone sideways, but enough of us. Why don't we call up our guest today? We have a guest, a new visitor to the inn, Barry. How you doing today, Barry?
Hey, thanks, guys. I'm very well, and thank you for having me at your lovely inn or house, David.
Yes.
He's the working guy.
Yeah, I'm the working guy.
Yeah.
I do have some liquor somewhere back here. I just have to look at the ERP to find it.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So but quickly, obviously, thank you for letting me in. Just to let you know who I am a little bit, I'm a marketing director here in London, UK. I'm just very quickly, I'm a new dad again. My second kiddie was born just 6 weeks ago.
Congrats.
So I'm very happy family man at the moment. And I'm currently overlooking my lovely garden. Since COVID, I have found more time to become a bit of a novice gardener. And I love it. I really enjoy nature and being out there. So and final point, it was very exciting to hear about your LinkedIn Live. Congratulations. That would be a new, as you said, you'll be absolutely live on LinkedIn. There'll be no chances for edits or anything like that. But very exciting.
Thanks for making me more nervous there, Barry. It's like But in all fairness, Barry, we've been doing these podcasts, video podcasts now for a while, and the only editing I've ever done on any of the episodes is trim off the beginning and the end, slap on the intro and the outro, and publish it. I mean, we've done very, very little massaging on the inside. I don't know if we'll get stage fright though going live. But so you're in London now? Is that where you're from originally?
Correct. Yeah, just nearby. Yeah, Reading,
okay.
But yeah, London, okay.
Awesome. So when have you been punched in the face, or have a story about somebody else being punched in the face?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have one. There's this was a personal time when I got punched in the face. It was a message. So I'm traveling to Singapore as an exhibitor at a conference. And upon my arrival, I did get a message actually saying that customs have kept my booth. Oh, absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure you guys know about customs. It will be ready when it's ready. There is no schedule. But to me, I have an event in a very short, I had less than 24 hours. At the time, I was relatively new and I wanted to make a big impression. I wanted to impress people. And so I was devastated. And I remember thinking like, what am I going to do? So I had 24 hours and it was the most hectic little period of me running around finding fast printing companies in the local area, trying to not use the conference services that cost an arm and absolutely, it would have bankrupted the trip, or I'd had to have sold 10 times more maybe, or need 20 times more people to cover the costs. So it was a time when it was asking a lot of favors, finding conference staff, me working throughout the night with a saw, trying to find random bits of wood, and then some helpful people go, oh, let me help you out here, buddy. Thanks. And it was all great. And in the end, with less than 24 hours, the next day, people turned up. You wouldn't have known the difference other than the fact that I looked awful, but the stand looked amazing. So, and that was great. So that was a moment I've never felt, and I was alone as well. This is the point. I'd flown over from London, UK. I felt alone in Singapore. I was like, what am I going to do? And that felt like a big punch in the mouth. I got to admit that. You were describing knockout blows earlier. That was a knockdown, but it didn't knock me out.
Now, I love this. I love this story because you had this booth. It's in customs. I'll assume that eventually it got released from customs, only to be returned back to London.
Way too late. Yeah, it was back to the Australia office. It was a very weird story of how it got there, but yeah, way afterwards.
Okay, yeah, way after. I mean, the conferences. The lights are off, and at this point, you don't really care if it's released or not because you have to come up with a plan B. So I got to ask, the moment that you were told that customs has got your booth and it's not going to be released anytime soon, what was your first reaction?
I don't think I can broadcast it.
Yeah.
It was I think I actually texted my wife randomly, like, guess what? Because I didn't want to just report back to work. I was like, let me figure it out. But you need an ally, someone to go, like someone to vent to. I was like, guess what's happened? But by the time I'd done that, you just go, like, hang on, what can I do? You'll figure this out. And if people that know me, they always say I do manage to I'll get things done, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I had a saying, my best man said at my wedding, he said, Barry always got a saying, you'll be all right. It'll be okay. Something like that. I've got keep calm. And I think that's what kept me through it. I was just like, oh, what can I do? Do my best. And I had in my head this image of, like, in the morning, it would be this like awful ricochet stand, like wood with nails sticking out of it. But everyone else got this professional backlit 3-story stand. But no, it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, like sort of like the the image of the inn you're thinking, yes. Right? Yeah.
Maybe that's what. Yeah, implanted that in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but after the first holy shit moment, what did you had to start deconstructing the situation and coming up with a plan, right? So what was that, what was that like? I mean, how did, after the holy shit moment, what did you do?
Sure. You're in project manager mode. I've got 24 hours. What is going to take, what is the critical path very quickly? And I was like, it's me somehow redesigning the fabric, if you wish, the covers. I've got to find a supplier I'm out here in Singapore. I've got to log into somewhere, get the files of my design that I'd sent to the previous designer, quickly then find that person. And that's where I then called up strategic allies. I rang other people back at the office. I went, right, quickly, get the team together. Find me the cheapest, best supplier in the local area. And I still remember this girl to this day. Credit to her. She was fantastic. Barry, I just sent you a map, less than 3 minutes walk. You've got this one supplier. I've rung them for you already. I was like, fantastic. Got down there, explained the situation. Don't worry, Mr. McIntyre, I have this done for you. I'll put a speedy print. I paid a little bit extra, obviously. And fantastic. And that was the main thing. It was me understanding. That's the main point. Then I had to get back and try and recreate the actual framework. And that's where I had to call in favors from people that were gathering around. And if you can imagine, it was a conference night there. There's lots of people walking around with this forklift trucks, there's hammers everywhere, there's saws everywhere, there's equipment for me to use. So yeah, I just got involved, and also big hats off to that conference team of a group of people who really understood, like, wow, this guy's up against it, let's help him out. So it was quite cool.
So did you end up with like one of those roll-up type of backdrops? Or
yes, so it was essentially it was essentially a frame that was built, and I built out a table, and then the printing came, and I was able to position it nicely over the backdrop that I'd done. So yeah, it looked spot on by the end. So I was like, phew.
So by the time everybody came to your booth, you're more like a duck on water, right? Nice and calm, sitting there, and your feet are going like 1,000 miles a mile.
Exactly that. But at least I had an awesome story to tell everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. How long was the conference?
It was just 2 days. So it was 2 days of actual conference. There's like other lot of workshop days and stuff like that, but 2 days in the conference hall.
Awesome. That's awesome. And everything worked out in the end.
Yes, it did. It was a very successful conference. It was absolutely fantastic.
Awesome. Now you had a second story, I think you were going to share.
Yeah, that's right. Now this one's actually from my granddad, and it's nothing about business. It's more, and it's actually from 1942, and essentially. My granddad became witness to a large group of soldiers who were trying to overcome their punch in the mouth. And that was the fact that, and I will backtrack to explain why on earth I'm talking about this, but they tried to get their bear onto the ship, taking it to the front line. And a British lieutenant said, sorry, why are you bringing a bear onto the ship? Can you please go leave that and come back on board? My granddad then witnessed the moment of everyone getting together going, what are we going to do? So let me just take you a step back. So you wonder why on earth there's a bear going on here. In 1939, Polish refugees that were making their way through the Middle East to make their way to Allied grounds. And they came across a Polish refugee lady, came across a poor bear that had, unfortunately, his parents had been killed by poachers. And this lady obviously felt tremendously sorry. You're in the same boat as me. Come on, I'll take you along. And picked up and looked after it. But obviously, a refugee camp is not an area that has enough nutrition for everyone. So I bet it was incredibly hard for her to look after this. But there's a group of Polish men who had signed up to join the Allied army in North Africa. They said, look, we're going to an army camp. We'll have provisions. Let us take us and look after the bear. So, of course, the lady gave the bear up. And this bear then essentially went off with this group of new soldiers. And as they trained, it stayed with the men. And it actually started to become one of the lads, one of the men, one of the troop. It learned and if you think I'm lying now, you can Google this. There's evidence of the bear saluting, drinking its beer, and even smoking a cigarette. Apparently, it would only take the first inhale, and there would no one looking. It would quickly eat it. So it didn't enjoy it, but it wanted to join in. And it's a fantastic. And they had a real bond with this bear. It would even wrestle. Obviously, they're bored soldiers. So a favorite pastime was wrestling. The bear would join in. Now, despite the fact we all know a bear could quite easily, injure a man, break his neck or back, it never would. It always restrained back. And they actually had this great camaraderie. It was one of the lads. So hence the reason why they then, being a group of Polish lads as well, not familiar with maybe the British rigor of the British Army in 1930 or whatever, they are bringing this bear on board and no, you're not allowed, sorry. So that was the moment my granddad witnessed. How on earth, we can't leave this bear. I think they'd given it a name, the warrior bear or something. I do forget its name, but if you look it up, it had a name. And they said, what are we going to do? They beat their own rules. They started to realize there is a Polish officer with enough seniority to appoint new soldiers into the army. And there is no rule that says a bear cannot join the Allied army. So they enlisted the bear. And I'm not joking again, it was actually an enlisted soldier. So they walked back up to the lieutenant or whoever it is on the ship who's preventing it. Here is papers, it is an official soldier. Can't argue with that. And the bear got on board. And it was a fantastic little story of how they actually took a bear to war. And the second final part, and this my granddad's opinion, I'm sure everyone has their opinion, but he believed that bear potentially saved his life. And the explanation is why. This bear was, obviously, as you imagine, it was not on the front line. It was with soldiers, slightly behind. And it was actually part of the artillery regiment. So it was quite far behind. But one day, the enemy forces did break through the front line. And where the bear was positioned behind the lines became under direct fire. But this artillery regiment was also a critical part of the battle to ensure the rest of the front line did not fall at this point. And they were under such heavy fire that the men couldn't get across small parts of open ground to fill up ammunition. The artillery was going to go quiet. Unfortunately, people were giving their lives. The bear could see what was happening. Okay, it ran across open ground of its own free will, picked up artillery shells that maybe 2 to 4 men could only carry on its back, and would run back and loaded the guns. So the Polish soldiers were amazed. Okay, there is actually testament. There is enemy forces who were looking down onto this situation, trying to fire, and it going, how are we going to win this battle? They've actually got a bear leveraging artillery, and it saved the day. It kept the artillery guns firing. The bear lived. And to this day, the bear is the emblem of this Polish brigade. It is a bear holding artillery above its head. The bear lived its days out as a celebrity in Edinburgh Zoo and died nicely of old age in the 50s. And my granddad testified that was a day that potentially maybe a bear saved his life. And it was how a group of soldiers thought quick, maybe a year earlier, to take this bear to war. When they got punched in the mouth, they thought quick. And got around the rules. And I just thought it was a fantastic story. But when I learned about it, I've read about it, it's documented. So if you don't believe me, please look it up.
No, I believe you for a couple of reasons. First, my wife is from Poland. And she's always sharing stories. And of course, I've become a little bit interested in Polish history, especially during World War II. And there was a whole, I was just reading this recently, a whole lot of refugees from Poland settled in a Middle Eastern country. I forget if it's Afghanistan or Syria or one of those. That's where they sought refuge for the duration of the war. And of course, we all know about the Polish aviators flying out of the UK. But the bear, I mean, if I was a German, I would have saw a bear. I would have thought I was on the Eastern Front, not the Western Front. So
yeah, you're right, exactly that. It's just such a great story. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you guys. That was my the 2 instances where I've been punched in the mouth, and where, if you wish, a bear got punched in the mouth.
Yeah, indeed. So or the Germans, as the case might be.
Yeah.
The bear went through the Middle East and then to North Africa.
Correct.
And the British didn't want it to go to the UK. Is that it?
No, it didn't. I believe it was probably further. I think it might have been Tobruk. I think it might be shipping their men further west, or more likely actually Italy, because that is where the instance of the bear famously running across open ground, I believe it was in Italy. So yeah, I'm sorry, I should have researched a bit more. But yes.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's really cool. So yeah, I mean, the stories, when people tell stories, they don't tell stories about when everything went according to plan, right? I mean, how boring a story is that? We tell our stories about when things, didn't go according to plan, and whether or not we're, heroes or goats, it doesn't really matter, because, we've been on both sides of that. I'm sure we don't always win, but, think about that. This adversity, our pain defines us, for lack of a better term. I think Captain Kirk said that, didn't he, Dave? I
Might
need
have,
my
might
I
have.
need my pain. That's it. It was in the episode where he was Spock's brother was trying to find God. I forget which Star Trek episode or Star Trek movie that was. But yeah, I mean, people tell stories that require adversity, and personal adversity, I think, is really the best. I mean, we moved from the U.S. to Germany. Guess what? There were a few things that didn't go according to plan. Does anybody ever have anything that goes according to plan? I don't know.
No, it's how prepared are you for when things go awry?
Right.
And Barry's, we all have that holy fuck that moment. I mean, oh God, this is a great ouch, that hurts. And then you have two classes of people. There's a class of people that they'll wilt, they'll melt and go, woe is me. And then you got others like Barry or yourself or myself that go, okay, that sucks. I'll embrace this suck. And now what do we do? And it's, what do you do? And I've learned enough from having to recover. I've got there's a reason why I am working as much as I am, is I've got a reputation of being able to take on stuff when things really the wheels have come off the wagon. And I'm blessed working with a client this time, on this project, where it's a quality problem. It wasn't because they were not diligent. It's they're having success, and how do we maintain that success? But there's been other projects where I've been brought in, and I walk in and everybody is this woe is me attitude, and it doesn't take very long when you aren't emotionally punched. You don't take it emotionally. You look at it and you go, oh, that's really not all that difficult to fix.
Right.
And then you start fixing it. It's the person who can walk into the chaos that's going around them and be able to calmly look at it and go, do this first, do this second, and then we do this.
I'm with you 100%. In fact, I think that's one of my superpowers. If I was a superhero, this would be one of my superpowers, is that, I could, be introduced into a situation of chaos, and I could quickly distill out what's important. You know what I mean? What we should concentrate our efforts on, or what needs attention. There's so many people that get overwhelmed with the number of inputs and the signals that they can't sort through what's really important. And I don't know if that's a gift or a curse sometimes, because this is the downside of that. People will be studying a problem for days, and I might come in there and in like 30 minutes I've figured out what we should do.
Yeah.
And they don't believe it's credible. Okay, they don't believe it's credible. They think that it should take more effort, and it doesn't. Sometimes it just doesn't. Sometimes consultants, people have this image of consultants as being so bright. Okay, and actually, we're pretty dumb. We just ask a lot of questions. Okay, we just ask a lot. We ask the questions that other people haven't asked before because they're so close to it. They're too close to it.
Or no, they don't ask the question because they already know the answer.
Right.
They already know the answer. And I talk about this in brainstorming sessions, and I'm always looking out for Dr. No. And Dr. No is the guy who's standing there or sitting there at the meeting and has the 12 gauge over and under shotgun. And as soon as somebody has a bright idea that starts to, they've spoken it and it starts to gain a little bit of altitude, Dr. No whips out that over under, boom, boom, and shoots it, obliterates the idea with we already did that. It didn't work. We're not doing that again. And so I look for the Dr. No's.
Yeah.
Dr. No's need to be invited to leave the party.
Yeah.
And
self-select out.
Yeah.
Dave, do you mind if I ask, have you ever been Dr. No, though? Have you ever had to hold the shotgun?
Yeah, I have. there's been a few times where I've had to be the shotgun holder, but it was more of a position where, okay, what we've got to do is cook this. We've got a lot of ideas now. Now let's cook it down.
Well,
Let's kill some of these options now. But I'm always wanting to hear other ideas on what the solution is going to be when the fecal matter has hit the rotating.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to challenge that for you, and I'm going to challenge it for Barry.
Yeah.
We're all parents. Okay.
Yeah.
Have we ever been Dr. No to our kids?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, there you go.
Isn't it Dr. No with reason?
Sometimes, our reason is because of a lesson learned 30 years prior. Okay, or 20 years prior. And things have moved. And by the way, sometimes our kids might be brighter than us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There's always, God forbid, that possibility exists.
Yeah. Well, every once in a while, I get reminded about how bright my daughters are, and
take after mom, right?
Yeah. We'll say that. We'll say that. But there's been, it's a different construct when you also run into, they're not. That won't work because so-and-so won't like it. And okay, who's so-and-so? They're this person. Yeah. And they don't have anything to do with this operation, do they? Yeah. Well, no, then so-and-so doesn't matter. There's that kind of, let's not put up in barriers to, to your solutions either.
Well, just look at not to bring up this darn subject again, but just think about COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we been punched in the mouth? I mean, this is the way we should do it, or that's the way we should do it. This works, that doesn't work, and only to find out the opposite is true. I mean, I know several people right now that either have recently had or have now COVID that have been fully vaccinated. You know what I mean? And, they're talking about, boosters, and I'm thinking, is this now going to be more like the flu? Not a booster is not going to help. What you need is a new vaccine targeted for the new strains. Just like the flu comes out every year, they make a different cocktail every year based on what they expect the flu variant to be. And they're making decisions, or they're talking about making decisions that are untested. And so. Do we have faith? I mean, I'm getting on the back nine. I can't quite see the clubhouse from here, but I'm on the back nine, so I take the shot, and what do I care, right? I'm well insured.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you think what the vaccine does. What the vaccine does is it builds up your immunity to fight off the infection. It doesn't prevent the infection.
Right.
It just boosts your immunity to fight off the infection. So it doesn't mean that you can't get it again. It just means that when you get it, your body already has a lot of immunity in place to be able to tackle it. So there's a lot of people that walk around thinking, well, the vaccine means I won't ever get it again.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
It just means your body now is equipped to fight it.
Exactly.
And that's a misconception of what a vaccine is.
So it brings us back to George Carlin, doesn't it? I mean, his whole idea about immunity, swim in the East River, in the sewage with all the bacteria and the fungus and the viruses, and exercise that immune system so that you have immunity.
Yeah.
Just I have a family member who caught it, and if she hadn't have had the vaccine, she would have been, unfortunately, I think it would have been a casualty. Whereas it just made her feel awful. And I think that was the big difference. Like, Derek, it made sure that it didn't push it too far, lady.
Yeah.
Right. It's to keep you from dying. It's not going to keep you from getting it again.
Right.
And that misunderstanding of what a vaccine really does, that's pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
And opportunities abound for our wonderful media communications conglomerate mess to get that straight. But
Yeah.
I will not climb on my I hate the media box.
Not again.
Oh,
Well, David, what do you
well,
think? I
remember,
think we
I'm
should
a-
take this home here. It's been a great
know,
conversation.
it has been. It's been great to hear Barry's story. Barry's story about the bear. I bet you that bear's name was Barry, perhaps. But it's been a great episode. So you've now wasted another hour of your life listening to JP and I prattle on. So what I'm left to say is just don't drive like my brother.
And don't drive like my brother. You have been listening to another episode of the Outliers Inn with your hosts, Joseph Paris and David Schneider. This program is produced by the Operational Excellence Society and sponsored by Zonatech Consulting Group International.